Take a deep breath with me, close your eyes. And today, like when we're chatting, my intention is just to speak from the heart and bring out your passion. So let's have some fun.
Let's do it.
Today on the show, we have Katie Wagner. She has built her career designing and scaling talent functions for high-growth tech companies. She is now working with Growth by Design Talent, where she helps companies like Anthropic, Discord, Stripe, and Figma build sustainable, inclusive recruiting strategies.
I take very much like a product-driven approach to a search. I call it problem-based recruiting. Treat every search like a product. You ask, what problem is this role going to be solving for the business right now?
I love that. Becoming a strategic recruiter, a strategic talent advisor is all about building trust, establishing credibility, moving quickly, being discerning as a recruiter.
I think the best recruiters are going to become those talent advisors if they can be able to speak the language of the business and really work well with the stakeholders. Recruiters aren't going away. There's still a need to have humans in the loop for recruiting.
Hey, everybody. This episode of Building the Talent Machine is brought to you by our sponsor, WellFound. If you're a recruiter like me, you're probably always looking for a smarter, faster way to find startup-ready talent. Well, WellFound has you covered. It gives you instant access to a talent pool of 10 million plus startup-minded candidates from all around the globe. You can set up everything in just 10 minutes or less, from posting jobs to building your employer brand and managing applicants, with everything you need to kickstart your recruiting in one place. Need data? WellFound integrates seamlessly with your ATS and helps you stay organized without the chaos. And if you're ready to supercharge your sourcing, meet WellFound AI. Stop scrolling and start hiring. WellFound AI reviews hundreds of profiles each week. It reaches out using hyper-personalized templates, and when candidates respond, it manages the back and forth for you. All that's left is one click to approve, and your calendar fills up fast. So if you're ready to find, connect, and hire your team from pre-seed to IPO and build with the best startup talent out there, WellFound makes it happen. Check out wellfound.com and see how fast you can tap into the startup talent ecosystem. Now, let's go build a talent machine. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the pod. Today on the show, we have Katie Wagner. She has built her career designing and scaling talent functions for high-growth tech companies. She is now working with Growth by Design Talent, where she helps companies like Anthropic, Discord, Stripe, and Figma build sustainable, inclusive recruiting strategies. Previously, she was the head of talent at Tarro. She's also an advisor with People Tech Partners, a founding member of Silo Ventures, and an active member of Troop HR. I'm so stoked on this. What's up, Katie? Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks. I'm honored. First podcast.
Well, you're super involved. I think when I go through reading off how you're involved in this recruiting community, it's like top notch. Those are all of the communities and places elite recruiters are spending their time. So let's talk a little bit about that first. Like, why are you spending so much energy in the community? What does it mean to you?
I feel like I learned so much from the community. And it's nice because a lot of times, especially if you're like at a startup, or maybe you're the only talent person in your company, or, you know, maybe you just need somebody to talk to that knows what you're going through. It's just very nice to be able to say like, hey, has anybody else encountered this before? And 9 times out of 10, they have. So there's that. And I very much love playing around with the latest and greatest recruiting technology, AI tools. And so it's nice to hear others' perspectives as well. That's where I learn about a lot of them from.
100%. Yeah. For folks that haven't heard or familiarized themselves with some of those organizations like People Tech Partners, Silo Ventures, Troop HR, how are you involved in each of them, and how do you describe them to somebody who may not have heard of them or know what's going down?
Yeah. So I guess, you know, the each group is very different. And so there's a wide range. Personally, the ones I'm in are all somewhat HR related. So for example, Troop HR it has a bunch of talent leaders, HR leaders, heads of people in it, and really sharing a lot of great content and just being able to rely on one another. Silo is very specific to the recruiting talent community. I've loved being in it so far. We get to be able to look at a ton of different recruiting vendors and tools. It's venture. And so we even get to be able to invest in some of those recruiting companies if we want to. So, and people tech partners, similarly, it's very much maybe somebody, a founder or a client has a question and they'll send it to our Google chat and we'll just collaborate on it. Like, has anybody run into this problem? What do you suggest as solutions for this? It makes me feel like I'm like caught up on the latest, as long as I can keep up with them. A lot of Slack channels.
Yeah, that's a lot. It is a lot of Slack channels. I am like so burnt out on Slack. Man, I feel like all the tools that I was using a few years back, Slack, Notion, no disrespect, but it's like, man, I don't want any of it anymore. Like,
What are
call
you
me
using?
on the phone. Call me on the phone. I use Slack and Notion every day. I just don't do the community side of like Slack anymore. I feel like,
Yeah,
I
it's
remember
hard to
recruiting
keep up with.
oh yeah. It's like, don't ping me, call me.
Yeah,
And the reality is, like, a lot of the folks I met on the internet, now they do. Like, I talk to a lot of folks from the recruiting world on a regular basis just about our lives. And it's this cool intersection for me of like personal and professional, where being that team of one, going out on my own, doing fractional, starting an agency, now building this content company and recruiting agency. It's
yeah,
like, I'm always just like a team of one. So I might as well like just show up how I show up with my friends anyway in the community. And like, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And what I've found is like some folks have taken me under their wing and it has completely accelerated not only my career, but also just how I feel about this work and the confidence that comes from doing it for 10 years.
yeah,
What
yeah.
is it like for you? What does it mean to you?
It's, networking is the game in every aspect, and that goes for your own career within recruiting too. I'm based in Philly, and I've been remote since 2020, and that can get lonely, especially being in the tech industry. There's not a ton of tech industry folks in the Philly area. It's either SF or New York, Austin, Denver. So I was also starting to crave that like live conversation in person, even, which I know you're doing a lot of now. And I just started collaborating on building a talent leader community in Philly for like tech industry folks. More to come. We have our first dinner on the books, but I'm craving it. I want a peer that I can lean on and also get a drink with at the same time.
Yeah, totally. I'm doing a community in Denver for recruiters as well. And it's interesting in Denver because you get all these like type A tech folks, which is awesome. But everybody here is also mega baller at their hobby or sport of choice. So if you're going to do something after hours, you're eating into somebody's like rock climbing, mountain biking time, trail running time. So the summer has been interesting because that's like really the time where people are out on the trails from 5 to 8. The sun doesn't set here until 9 p.m. in the summer. So yeah, if you're doing any like happy hours in Denver, people always ask me, they're like, how do you get people to show up to these things? And it's like, you just
Yeah.
gotta wait. It's not like New York or LA or somewhere else where people might like ride out traffic leaving the city.
Right.
But that's
See
why
you
I
in the
enjoy
fall.
it. It's going to be a big fall. And I'm excited about that because conference season part 2 is heating up.
Yeah.
And
It's
you're
true.
speaking. So tell us a little bit about that. What's going down this month for you?
Yeah. So I'm speaking alongside Allison from Growth by Design. We're speaking on structured interviewing and how you can kind of incorporate AI into structured interviewing. So very excited to speak on the topic. I'm very passionate about structured interviewing in general and like the whys behind it. And so, yeah, excited to see a lot of people in person. Some I've seen before and some I've never met in person, but just have a really good friendship with async. So it'll be a good time.
Great. Yeah. Shout out to the whole Growth by Design team. I had an opportunity to interact with Mike Joyner out at Greenhouse Open for Ops and had an absolute blast hearing about the great work that you guys are up to. So, yeah, structured interviewing. Let's dive in. I think that's a big topic right now, particularly as we have emerging tools in AI like interview transcription. So, when I think about structured process, the first thing that comes to my mind is accountability. We need hiring managers to be accountable to that process that we establish at the kickoff. How do you think about accountability in structured interviewing?
Yeah. Well, For one, tend to put the most focus on the very beginning of the process before you even start searching for that role, before you even put a JD together. So I take very much like a product-driven approach to a search. I call it problem-based recruiting. You can feel free to term it however you want. Treat every search like a product. The first time you sit down with a hiring manager, you ask, what problem is this role going to be solving for the business right now? And what is this candidate going to solve in the first year that they'll be here? And that's a different muscle to flex for a lot of recruiters. I feel like it's very easy on both sides. The hiring managers will send in a rec request and they'll basically say, I need a customer success person right now. Can you start recruiting for me? And just want the job to be posted same day. They don't want to hold an intake. They don't want to fill out any type of form. And, that's difficult because the recruiter is just kind of going based off of a title. And at the same time, it's very easy for a recruiter to go into an intake meeting and start to ask a lot more of the tactical questions that could probably be done asynchronously. And so I'm trying to kind of shift that of let's start with the problem and work backwards from a recruitment standpoint.
Love that. I also love the turn of phrase. Problem-based recruiting?
Problem-based recruiting, you start with the problem. Yeah. So basically here's the framework at a high level. You come into your intake meeting and your goal is to defining the problems that are happening in the business and how this hire is going to solve them. So it's not, we need a PM, it's, we need to speed up go-to-market feedback loops. And so then you take that problem, you translate it into skills necessary to solve those problems. What do the outcomes look like? And just basically put them into deliverables, experiences, skills to be able to solve those problems. And then what success actually will look like in the first year. So once you have identified those problems, then you basically can start building the hiring process around it. So now all of a sudden, you're starting to search for very specific experiences, very specific skill sets that might be a bit untraditional compared to, like a typical customer success role, might be a unique profile. So build out the interview rubrics, look at the scorecards, building out interview questions for it, and how you're going to make the decision against it. Once you have that kind of assessment framework, then you pressure test it once you start recruiting. Pressure test it with stakeholders, whether that's hiring managers, interviewers. Are we actually going after the right things, the right skill sets? And just constantly reiterating on it from learnings. Ideally, the impact of that is one, efficiency, because you're now narrowing your search down. It reduces the number of outbound you have to do, interviews you have to complete, because you're more calibrated up front. You're not, recalibrating for every 10th hiring manager screen because you're increasing your pass-through rate at the hiring manager interview due to the calibration and therefore, hopefully, higher. But then also another impact is quality of hire. Now, instead of hiring against the job title, you're hiring the right person for the right role at the right time for the right problem, all kind of based on where the business is at that moment in time. And then also I've just found that stakeholders, hiring managers will tend to just, trust you more. You build that rapport faster because they feel heard. You start with their pain point and work from there. You're not asking about tactical things such as, what's a typical profile that you'd be looking for? Where is this person located? You can do all of that async, but hear them out. What are they struggling with? How does that tie into the larger business? And build that trust with them.
I love that. Becoming a strategic recruiter, a strategic talent advisor is all about building trust, establishing credibility, moving quickly, being discerning. as a recruiter. I think a lot of hiring managers bring in their preconceived notions of what it's like working with recruiters in the past. And my approach in an intake, particularly the first one at a rec kickoff, whether it's a new client, new hiring manager, is like, hey, let's just both clean slate it. This is, a process that you and I are collaborating on. We're equally accountable. I'm
Yeah.
committed to the post-hire outcome. And the number one question I ask in that intake kickoff is why? It's why are we hiring this role? Because once you get a hiring manager talking the way you described, it's going to inform the way we communicate with candidates and give us better signal when we're able to process and deeply listen to the needs of the business. But here's the kicker. It impacts close rates too. I'm sure you've gotten this from candidates. I always blow past compliments, and I'm probably not the only one that does this, but like when a candidate is like, oh my God, you're one of the best recruiters I've ever worked with. You were so knowledgeable. All these like glow up things that I just forget about because I'm here doing my job.
Yeah.
I need to remind myself to pause and to listen because that's the trust piece that we're parlaying from the hiring manager to the candidate. And they're making such a huge decision in their life that when we're able to trust them and speak so knowledgeably, that is like just fuel on the fire to greenlight somebody's ability to become that recruiting advisor when they ask better questions in a kickoff because it reflects in the candidate experience.
Yeah. Be curious about the business. Yeah, the candidate feedback, that's the best part, I feel like, of recruiting, where it's just so nice to get that like live feedback when you're in Google Meets interview and, you do your pitch and they're like, oh my God, you know so much about the business. Thank you. And then they go to the hiring manager screen and they're like, actually, like, I've heard a lot of this already. Thank you. And then that reinforces your relationship with your hiring manager too.
Yeah, I love that is when you get that like on the backside of it where the candidates are excited to talk about their experience with the hiring manager. And it's just almost like this continuous feedback loop of positive reflection of the brand experience of what it's like to work at that company. And I think discerning candidates pick up on it. They're like, whoa, if this is a recruiter that's talking like that, I need to be on top of my game. And when it comes to hiring
100%.
elite talent, that's the point.
Yep, exactly.
You mentioned quality of hire. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole today. We're going to talk about quality of scorecard. No one talks about the quality of scorecard.
Yeah. Well, which aspect do you want to talk about? Because I have a lot of opinions.
There's a couple inputs when I think of like quality of scorecard. One of my favorite micrometrics is time to scorecard completion. If you're a recruiter and you've got your notifications set up in the ATS or you're piping that into Slack, you know when a candidate is like bringing their A game and aligned. That's always a signal I like is how fast is a hiring manager delivering feedback? So we could talk about the time aspect, but then the quality aspect is that compliance piece, that accountability. Did they ask all of the questions in full? Did we grade that question to the right leveling in the rubric? How are we mitigating bias? How are we keeping that stopgap from a manager trying to inflate the level of a role for lower compensation where hiring managers often index on senior director skills at IC specialist level budgets?
Yeah.
So anyway you want to take it.
Yeah, I have lots of reactions. So first and foremost, this is just, I guess, a PSA. There is no excuse to not have notes ready to be submitted immediately, because even if you don't have a tool like a MetaView, a BrightHire, a Granola, whatever it may be, you can still transcribe your notes through Google Meets, through Zoom. You can easily make it easier on the hiring managers to submit it. So there's that. There's my PSA on time. But also, I think like going into those tools, when you think of like quality of the scorecard that's being submitted, and then what is the recruiter's responsibility with that, especially now that we have all these tools like a MetaView, BrightHire, Granola, what have you. I feel like there's so many more ways that we can use those tools to its fullest capabilities. There's the CRM aspect where you can go back and think about like you were in the intake meeting, you established the problem, how to assess against those problems, you aligned on a process, you're good to go. And then you start noticing in some of the interviews that they're kind of going off track. Maybe the hiring manager is not assessing for the things that you had pre-planned for them to assess on. Maybe you start seeing themes where other interviewers who are on the panel or another round that's not the hiring manager are going way off track and don't know what they're assessing for at all, or don't have an assigned theme area, or just completely choose a different direction because it's solving their problem, not the hiring manager's problem. Why aren't we utilizing these tools more so to be able to take those themes and then consult the hiring managers on it? Like, hey, your round one with X interviewer, passer rates are way down, but you're giving, a 4, a strong yes to them. What's going on? You two seem miscalibrated. Well, let's dig into why. And then you find out, well, the interviewer isn't assessing for the things you wanted to assess for, nor do they know what their role is or what the problem is that this person's going to solve. So there's a way that we can lean in truly as like talent advisors, hold interviewers, hiring managers accountable based on these scorecards. So it's not just, this makes my life easier and I don't have to fill out a scorecard anymore. It's no, let's use this to up level our recruiting, hold team members accountable, and make sure we're assessing against the right things and making hiring decisions rooted in data. So, there's different ways that you can do that. You can plug in your themes to ChatGPT, Claude, whatever it may be, and say like, here's all the interviews. What themes do you see? What is everybody assessing for? Attach your intake form that you took, that you aligned on at the very beginning, and say, how are these interviewers going off track? Are they assessing for the right things against this intake form? The answer is no, they're not. Then that's where you can pinpoint your problem a lot faster and then, fix it a lot faster, as opposed to trying to decide over many, many interviews where the miscalibration is.
It's interesting because when they came to market, interview transcription tools, it was, look, mom, no hands. And that's great. But
Yeah.
as soon as this came out, and I've talked to these vendors, know the founders, have worked with them in the past in some capacity, and it's like, okay, let's talk more about accountability, because interview surveillance is actually a good thing for recruiters, hiring managers, candidates. How many times have you heard a hiring manager say like, oh, they weren't a cultural fit? Now we have the data to go back and be like, okay, well, Mr. Hiring Manager, you did 80% of the talking. How would you even know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so many different use cases where like, even vice versa, like holding the recruiting team accountable where, I would, one way that I used it was taking all of my recruiters' pitch, the company pitch, and taking all of their pitches and bringing them together and pulling out the best aspects of it. And even would share it with hiring managers of, hey, here's my pitch for the company. Can you give me feedback, founder? Or, hey, hiring manager, here's my pitch for the role. Can you give me feedback? Am I explaining it the correct way? And that has helped me like understand the role more, but then also gain trust as well.
Totally. And that's what sales teams have done for years through call intelligence, that constant feedback loop. It's like break the fourth wall, get over yourself. You're going to be on Zoom. You're going to be recorded. It benefits everybody. And if recruiters are going to be perseverant through these years and have a job, like they need to be able to show up, have a great pitch, communicate with candidates that's clear and effective, stay structured. And hiring managers, they've got to do the same, because candidate experience is everything. And yes, there are a lot of inbound applicants, but that doesn't mean every inbound applicant is the qualified candidate that is going to solve the problem that you talked about at the very top of the funnel when it comes down to aligning in the kickoff call.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit more about like problem-based recruiting. Are there any more like steps that you like, I don't know, like how you implement this into companies? Like, how
Mm.
could somebody do this on Monday?
Well, two things. I'll say, the way that we kind of rolled it out at Tarro, I gained buy-in from the top and was able to pilot it with different folks. And, it really started opening eyes to different hiring leaders of saying like, wow, you're right. Like, I actually don't need this profile that I thought I needed. I actually need this. So really just like the discussion, collaboration with others gained buy-in fairly quickly. But recently in one of my Substack newsletters, I was writing about this whole thing and the framework. And because I remember like it's a muscle. You have to build the muscle. And so even when I'm working to train my recruiters on, this problem-based recruiting, it takes practice for them. It takes shadowing somebody who knows how to do it really well. It takes understanding the business really well and having the context. But in my latest newsletter, I said, well, why not just make this kind of self-serve? So I put that framework into a GPT and anybody can use it. Recruiters, hiring managers, interviewers, founders, whoever you want. And it really like challenges you and pushes back on you where normal, ChatGPT will just kind of do whatever it asks you to do a lot of times. But I wanted to make sure that you're starting with the problem first. So if, somebody is like, I just need to hire this role, create a JD for me, it'll say, no, we actually need to define the problem first and work backwards from it. So if you want like a just-in-time tool and you feel like, chatting with a bot instead of a human about it, I think that it could help recruiters during intake meetings, even like prepping for it. Same thing for hiring managers to help them really define what they actually need to recruit for. But then like the output of it is, here's a JD. Here are the problems this person wants to solve. Here's the full interview loop and how to assess against it, depending on how far you want to take it. But I would say if you want to do it tomorrow, that would be an easy way.
I love it. It's awesome. And I love this concept. Everybody's talking about human in the loop. I'm a big believer that recruiting is a business process first and a job title second. There is no rule that says a hiring manager can't jump in and run their own process today or for the last 40 years. And I'm excited because if recruiters can be that human in the loop, we can be even more precise with those conversion rates, the pass-through rates, the close rates. I think like interview ratios are about to be flipped on their heads and traditional benchmarks of pass-through rates are just completely irrelevant in the next 2 to 5 years. And I'm really excited about that because that means people like you and I, like we can make such an impact in this like wave of hiring that I call the third wave of hiring, where it's human-centered design, it's AI-enabled tools, it's autonomous workflows, it's orchestration, engineering, whatever you want to call it. But I think there is a future in which a hiring manager can be the human in the loop and a recruiter can still exist at that company. And they can even be partners. Like you could be a recruiting advisor to a hiring manager that maybe they are running their own process and they tap you in for certain parts of the funnel.
Yeah.
You're a startup gal. I'm a startup guy. When I hear about recruiters that have a recruiting coordinator, a talent partner, a sourcer, it's like, wow, that's awesome. So you log on and interview people all day. That's cool. Like I completely forget that that's a job and it's like a similar job title, but it's a completely different skill set and development of experience. So when I think about human in the loop, agentic AI sourcing bots, I don't know. I just think like recruiters are about to be superpowered.
That's a good way of saying it. We're like superheroes now. But I agree. I've been thinking about this a lot. Even over the last like 10 years with any tech tooling entering into recruitment, people get scared that their jobs are going to go away, even before AI was a thing, really.
Sure.
But now you see the capabilities that it can do. And I think of it like recruiters aren't going away. Sure, things may be more efficient, but our job descriptions are changing. So you're going to be able to start doing the things that you never had time to do, especially when you're talking about like a full talent team that has sourcers, recruiters, coordinators, analysts, rec ops versus startups where it's you're the full cycle recruiter, you're the only one, maybe there's a few others, you're doing everything. It's a totally different capacity of a recruiter who has a sourcer and a coordinator versus a full cycle recruiter who's doing all the scheduling, all of the sourcing, all of the interviews, and stakeholder management. So these tools are going to help those full cycle recruiters. It's like they have their own sourcer and coordinator to help them out. And so now they're not going to feel as if they were drowning, really. But I think that we're going to start, the best recruiters are going to become those talent advisors if they can be able to speak the language of the business and really work well with those stakeholders, advise them on the roles, the candidates, even looking at like org design, starting to look at like different themes. They don't have time to do that now. And I also feel like recruiters are probably moving to more like community driven. They're going to now be able to lean into a lot of the branding stuff, a lot of, community events and like getting brand recognition out there, even boots on the ground. It depends on what type of recruiting, but recruiters aren't going away. Maybe the title will change, maybe the job description will change, but there's still a need to have humans in the loop for recruiting regardless.
And you mentioned org design. I think about the future of a recruiting group. There's a flattening where tactical recruiters are going to naturally develop and become more strategic. But then those strategic folks in recruiting leadership roles are going to have to become more tactical. And I talk to recruiting managers, recruiting directors in some industries where they haven't worked a rec in years. And I think that scares a lot of folks, that the previous playbook of recruit for 5 years, get promoted into people management and like coast and just do internal meetings and stakeholder management and data and reporting and like play the political game to keep a job. That's just gone. And I think that was like an easy career path for advancement for recruiters. But now it's like, if you don't like working recs, you're out. Like that's just the reality. Like you're going to have to close candidates. You're going to have to source, because what you mentioned is we're on the dawn of the AI spam canning. We're on the dawn of the AI spam cannon destroying people's inboxes. So you're going to actually have to get boots on the ground and recruit and care about your candidates in the community if you're going to deliver great alignment at the top of the funnel and the pass-through rates that are going to be sufficient to get a higher placed in time. A lot of folks fell into recruiting during the easy years, and that's great. We've got a lot of folks that joined recruiting, they learned it, they loved it. But the reality is, like, if you're not going out there and building pipeline in 2 weeks for a hiring manager, you're probably not going to be doing this job much longer.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. It's interesting because you're seeing like differences at every stage. Now that we have these kind of like earlier stage companies who are, starting after AI, they're able to get to 50 million ARR with 10 to 20 people. And so there's this, trend of let's do more with less. And those startups, I'm not going to say easy for them, but it makes it easier because they're starting from zero, right? They don't already have a large team. They're building their infrastructure with the proper tooling and efficiencies that they need. Whereas, growth stage and beyond, they maybe have built up these teams. You're seeing all these layoffs nonstop for however many years now. But, a lot of founders, leaders are saying, we can solve this with AI. Let's just, let's add in AI and let's get leaner. So the problem with that is they're already drowning, right? Yes, you can absolutely add in AI tools, but I've seen like a few things happen. You eliminate roles before you implement said tool. And so now everybody that's left over, they're just trying to stay afloat. They don't have time to be able to even implement a new tool because they're keeping the lights on. or the, let's say, process itself isn't fixed before you make that decision to implement the AI tool. If you don't fix the core of the problem before you add on a tool, that tool's not going to do anything for you.
So true.
So, yeah, it's so hard for these like growth stage talent leaders who haven't been in like a player coach capacity. Now they're essentially, if they want a new job, they're being forced to move into player coach where they're owning Rex again. And it's been however many years. So it's a tough market out there for talent folks for sure with just, AI is shaping everything and company cultures as a whole.
Now, the show's Building the Talent Machine. You talked a little bit about implementing problem-based hiring. So instead of going back to the drawing board on how you built the machine at Tarro, tell me a little bit about like a hiring story that maybe it was a candidate or a hiring manager that you just still think about today.
Candidate or story. This isn't for like a specific candidate, but I've started seeing a theme with problem-based recruiting. Is that okay? Will that answer your question?
Yeah, let's do it.
So it depends on the founder, of course, and or the hiring manager. But when you really start to dig into like, what's the true problem that you're trying to solve here? I've seen that there are a few aha moments, whether that's with the hiring manager or leadership elsewhere. Some examples of those themes. One is you decide that you actually need an untraditional profile because your problem is so specific that not just any person who's been there, done that would be able to solve it because it's not a copy and paste. It never is, but it's a totally different problem. And so they kind of shift like, actually, I don't want to hire a traditional salesperson into this role. Another thing is sometimes you realize you actually don't even need that role. The rec is just being requested to get additional headcount because they feel underwater. But when you start to dig in, like, what's the problem here? Like, what are these problems? They can't define a problem.
Yeah.
Why are you hiring? That's
Because
always
it's
my
Q4,
question.
they want the budget for next year.
Yeah. Well, so many reasons, right? And they want, playing the game for sure. But so there's that. So I found myself kind of being this like, well, let's think about how we can stay lean and solve the actual problem with the resources that we have first. Or can AI solve that? And then sometimes in these intakes, or as you're digging into the problem itself, if you have the business acumen to be able to probe really deep, sometimes you realize this isn't a need for an extra headcount. This is a process issue that needs to be reworked. And once that problem or process is reworked, then you don't need the extra headcount. So maybe you hire a consultant or a contractor or something to fix that problem instead. Or maybe you find out like, teams aren't being goaled properly. Whatever the case may be, you find out that they're solving a problem with headcount and a human instead of fixing the root cause. So I've seen that theme pop up as well, which has been very interesting. Between all of those, it's, we're really being challenged like, well, how can we stay lean? How can we do more with less? And the minute you start to have these like cross-functional conversations and really understand the big picture, you're starting to put two and two together of like, well, if this is this here and they want the same thing here, what's going on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I also, this is where I put on my, people ops hat. It's like, well, what is the productivity of your team? Like, could this be accomplished by better productivity? What are the tools and systems and operations or motivation that we could leverage? I think about this with sales hiring all the time. And I always tell a VP of sales, it's, okay, you want another AE. Have you already approached your team? Have you triggered some sort of accelerator for a 90-day burst? If I'm a sales leader, I always want to give my team the opportunity to make more money before I bring in headcount. And here's why. If I went to you and was like, Katie, do you want to put in another 5 hours a week for the next quarter and have a 2x accelerator on incentive comp. And we're going to go on, this sales kickoff trip. We could hire somebody else, and I'll probably come to you and ask you if you can help train and mentor and have them shadow you. So it's going to eat probably 2 to 3 hours of your week anyway. I want to give you this opportunity before we go to market and hire somebody else. What do you say? You want to make some money?
Yeah, of course. Well, I would, but but yeah, it's, stop accepting status quo. Start to challenge what status quo is today and start to look at, if we're going off the sales example, what's your funnel look like? Are we burning your top of funnel? What's your conversion rates? Same thing goes for recruiting, to be honest. Sales and recruiting is so much alike. And I've always thought that I could probably talk your ear off about that topic in general, but
please do.
You look at your funnel and it's like, we don't need to solve more recruiters with this. We actually need to calibrate better at this stage, because you're looking at your funnel and understanding like, oh my God, like the hiring manager isn't passing forward anybody. Why is that? Let's dig in. But yeah, same thing goes for sales as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think objectively, if you look at a sales dashboard and a recruiting dashboard, and you ask somebody that has like zero experience, or maybe you ask AI, like, hey, what is this? They might say it's similar or same thing. And then it's that argument that I think people online love to get heated about on the personality behavioral traits of, is recruiting sales? And fundamentally, like, are you selling a job versus selling a product? Well, if you sell a software product, the software product doesn't decide to up and leave 2 months after they signed the contract.
Right.
So I would argue that recruiting may even be harder than sales. And also, you're talking about people's lives, their livelihood, their access to medical benefits, their retirement. Not, is this person a budget owner at some enterprise company that's going to write a check with somebody else's money?
Yeah. Yeah. You're selling humans.
Man, I keep coming back to problem-based recruiting. I think because it's such great marketing. You're a fantastic marketer. What you're doing is field marketing. Let's talk a little bit about employer brand. What do you think it takes for recruiters to win great candidates today and the companies that are going to be around in the next few years?
Yeah. Well, I feel like anybody who's anybody is putting themselves out there these days, first and foremost. It was uncomfortable for me when I started doing it. You start to get the hang of it. But you have to be present, whether that's you as the recruiter or a hiring manager. Everybody has to be present online so that somebody knows about you. But also, like, this is not very like brand or marketing specific. I feel like you start to close candidates from your very first conversation. And I feel like what a lot of people don't realize about recruiters is that we tend to be candidates' therapists. And it's will unload everything on us because we're a neutral party, right? They're not going to tell you about their dating life and, their personal obligations and, all their medical stuff. But truly, like, we're their therapists in a way. And I think that's good, to be honest, because you're coaching candidates on like, is this the right mutual fit? Let's actually talk about it. Let's get to the nitty gritty, and it helps you close faster. Or maybe you find out that it's not a mutual benefit, and that's actually a plus for the company. And so really, like, I feel like if we're talking about like, are recruiters going away completely? It's going to be really difficult to not have recruiters to be able to even like close candidates and attract candidates, because you have somebody that's walking you through the process. Because again, we're selling humans. You're talking about your benefits and everything. It's real life stuff. It's one of their biggest life decisions. And so they need somebody to talk it through. That's a neutral party. And if a recruiter is really great at coaching and guiding these candidates forward and really just being super transparent as much as they can, that's going to say a lot about the company.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of recruiting is influencing human behavior, and that is a lot of responsibility because we're influencing human behavior around something that is somebody's livelihood. And we've all heard those horror stories of, the last few years where layoffs are on the rise and a candidate, leaves a job they've been at for 4 years. They're fully vested. They join another company and 2 months in, they're laid off. There's like all sorts of articles and headlines about this. It's crazy. Is that out of our
Yep.
control as a recruiter? Yeah, of course. Like we're just meeting an SLA for the client that we work with for our job. But at
Right.
the end of the day, influencing human behavior with empathy is so key. And that's why I'm excited about this idea of problem-based recruiting. I'm excited about the work that you're doing. Really excited to tune in and hear about your talk at the RecOps conference. Can I hit you with a quick fire question?
Okay.
All right,
Hit
quick
me.
fire. What's your favorite go-to recruiting metric?
Hiring manager screen pass-through rate. To me, that's the earliest signal if you're calibrated on the role and on the candidate profile. If it's low, if they're not passing through anybody, there's a miscalibration somewhere.
Awesome. How can recruiters improve their hiring manager pass-through rate?
Problem-based recruiting.
Teed you up for that one.
Yeah. I had a feeling. But I mean, truly, like if you do the work up front, then it's going to increase your calibration over time and then therefore pass-through rates. But, a lot of people see that intake, especially on the hiring manager side, as, red tape process for the sake of process. But it's not. It's slowing down to speed up.
Love that. Well, Katie, this has been a blast. Thanks for coming on the show. You author a Substack, but how can people stay in touch with you and the work that you're doing?
Yeah. LinkedIn, of course, add me. I'm always happy to do just like casual coffee chats with fellow talent peers. I love those. I love talking shop. Substack, that's basically it. I'm not on socials very much besides LinkedIn and Substack.
And you're keeping it Trilly Philly. What have you got going on? Any events for the rest of the year?
You know what? I'm going on a reading retreat in the Catskills, quite literally. It's called Page Break. So I'm very excited. I'm turning a new page. This is very much out of my comfort zone. I'm going up there with strangers to read a book together over a weekend. See how it goes.
That is some extra nerdy stuff right there.
Very nerdy.
I hope you have a great time. Everybody, make sure you see Katie's talk at the RecOps conference. Specifically, when and where? Do you know the time and date off the top of your head?
I know that it's Wednesday next week.
Well, Katie, thank you so much for coming on the show. This is awesome. And have a wonderful day.
Thanks. You too. Appreciate you.